Every crime leaves a trail. Every clue tells a story. And every truth demands to be uncovered.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really disturbing urban safety crisis coming out of Kochi. You know, when we think of danger, we rarely blame the architecture, but recent data reveals a stark connection between vacant, crumbling buildings and a sudden surge in crimes against women. By looking at the timeline, the police response, and the exact nature of these deserted spots, we can really start to understand how empty buildings are basically transforming into unmonitored hubs for criminal activity. And this is absolutely crucial. It's not just a localized Kochi problem. It's a massive wake-up call showing how the decay of urban infrastructure can directly threaten human safety in literally any city.
Is the city turning unsafe for women at night? That is the big, heavy question we're tackling today. And look, we aren't just talking about random, isolated acts of violence here. We are digging into a very real, systemic issue that has become a terrifying reality for residents. The core of this explainer is to figure out how the physical environment of a city, specifically its forgotten, deserted spaces, can unintentionally set the stage for danger. We're going to see how this exact systemic vulnerability recently culminated in a really alarming event that brought this whole issue into the spotlight.
Okay, let's look at the specific incident from May 5th that really blew the lid off this whole thing. Picture this. A totally mundane scenario. A woman and her male friend are just walking near the Inoculum South railway station at around 9 p.m. All of a sudden, the rain just starts pouring down. So naturally, they step into a deserted building nearby just to wait it out, right? It's something literally any of us would do to stay dry. But this perfectly innocent search for temporary shelter turned incredibly dark, incredibly fast, exposing the hidden dangers lurking right inside the city's unchecked infrastructure. This sequence of events is just chilling. As the rain got heavier, the two friends moved up to the upper floor of the building. But what they didn't know, they weren't alone in there. 3 men were actually already inside, using the dark, empty space to drink unnoticed. And things escalated so fast. The attackers followed the pair upstairs, brutally assaulted the male friend, and basically pinned him back by threatening him with a knife. Then, using the complete cover of this abandoned space, they attempted to rape the woman. It's an absolutely terrifying timeline, and it perfectly illustrates how criminals leverage forgotten infrastructure as a trap. Now, there is a silver lining here, which is the sheer speed of the institutional response. Despite this crime happening in such a remote, unmonitored blind spot, the police managed to arrest all 3 accused within days. They quickly grabbed 39-year-old Rahul from Kollam and 26-year-old Danish from Thiruvananthapuram, and literally by the very next day, they caught the prime accused, 25-year-old Sanjay Ulasan. So the investigative power is clearly there, right? Once a crime is reported, they absolutely have the capacity to track these guys down. But, well, as we're going to see, reacting to a crime after the fact is a whole different ballgame than preventing it in the first place. Because when we zoom out, we realize the May 5th attack was absolutely not a one-off anomaly. It's actually part of a really dark, multi-month pattern of violence that relies entirely on the cover of darkness and isolation. Just walk through this timeline with me. February 24th, a 45-year-old woman is tragically beaten to death under the Vaitila overbridge, and they even tried to stage it as a suicide. March 15th, a 23-year-old woman is sexually assaulted, beaten, and robbed in Kalamazoo. Skip ahead just 2 weeks to March 29th. Another woman is sexually assaulted while simply walking home from work, and she literally only escapes because she uses pepper spray. And then boom, May 5th. This isn't random. It is a clear, terrifying escalation of violence over just 4 short months. So what went wrong? Well, it really comes down to a tragic, broken promise between policy and execution. Check this out. After that brutal assault in mid-March, the city police actually formulated a solid action plan. They explicitly promised strict inspections of the city's dark spots and abandoned buildings to root out this exact danger. But then, look at the reality in May. A senior officer admitted that because they were stretched so thin with heavy security demands elsewhere, the manpower just wasn't there. Those inspections basically never happened. And that failure to execute the March safety plan, it essentially left the front door wide open, directly allowing criminal elements to just keep camping out in these spaces and strike again on May 5th. And that brings us right to the root of the systemic problem, the abandoned buildings themselves. Now, when we say abandoned buildings here, we aren't talking about tiny little rundown shacks. We are talking about massive, vacant urban structures. The building from the May 5th attack, that used to be a fully functioning hotel, but it got tangled up in some complex legal disputes and was just left to rot.
When massive infrastructure is stuck in this legal limbo, it basically becomes a free, unmonitored hotel for antisocial elements. It's like the city's own architecture starts working against it, giving criminals a permanent blind spot to operate in, outside the view of the law.
So what do the authorities have to say about all this? City Police Commissioner Kalaraj Mahesh Kumar addressed the situation head-on. He noted that once they actually knew about the incident, they moved incredibly fast. He said, with bare minimum clues, we worked out which antisocial elements were present and traced them. And he really hits the nail on the head regarding a tough double reality here. On one hand, it is incredibly difficult to monitor these legal limbo ghost towns before something bad happens. But on the other hand, the police proved they can do highly effective, swift work to track perpetrators down once a case is actually opened. And fully acknowledging that previous manpower shortages let things slip through the cracks, the police have now laid out a brand new 4-step institutional response to permanently clear out these danger zones. First up, teaming up directly with railway authorities to get CCTVs installed near these blind spots. Step 2, proactively mapping out these limbo buildings and the local antisocial elements hanging around them. Step 3 is getting tough legally. The accused actually had prior theft records, so police are planning to invoke COPPA, which is a super strict Antisocial Activities Prevention Act against them. And finally, Step 4, rolling out extra patrolling and what the commissioner called area domination, basically flooding the zone to physically take back these spaces.
So as we wrap up this explainer, we are left with one massive, lingering question. Will these new measures be enough to reclaim the night for the women of Kochi? We've seen the clear link between decaying urban infrastructure and violent crime. We've seen the horrifying timeline of escalation, the roadblocks that stalled police action before, and the aggressive new steps being promised today. But ultimately, we have to ask, will the city follow through this time? Will they ensure that the city's infrastructure actually protects its citizens rather than endangering them? It's a massive, complex test for urban management, and one we definitely need to be paying very close attention to in the weeks to come.